Hello there, I'm Dark Shades aka Black Bright, and today's video is about trying to escape a violent relationship. There's a lot of agencies out there, and when you're in the middle of getting flogged or beaten up, what good is an agency? Most people who are in violent situations want to be able to get out there and then. They need help now. So while the agencies are there to provide what I consider after support, they're not really there when you need it. They can't prevent abuse from happening. They can't protect you from abuse when it's happening. It's only after it's happened they can do something about it if you decide to report it. And a lot of people, they just want it to stop. They don't want to have to go to the police station. They don't want to have somebody arrested. They just want it to stop. Some people, they don't realise that the only way to get it to stop is to report it. But even then, when sometimes they report it, the perpetrator is put in jail or put in a cell and later on released with no further action. So it's just like, why am I bothering? We have so many victims of domestic abuse, male and female, and so many individuals are tolerating it, not knowing what to do. The reason I decided to do this video is because I'm not even sure if my advice is the best advice. That's why, each individual has to make up their own mind. Each individual knows their tolerance levels, their their threshold for pain. And as much as neighbours might interfere when they hear you screaming, when the police come say, "Oh, it's okay, I'm okay," there's nothing anyone can do. But supposing you really at your wit's end, supposing you really want to call it quits, supposing you're on the verge of suicide because you just want this violence to stop, what do you do? Who is there for you? And that's why I decided to do this video, because a lot of times it can be a lonely road. You've got friends and families and they've got no room to put you. They don't want to get involved. They don't want your spouse or your partner knocking on their door. They don't want the police involved. Everybody wants to keep themselves to themselves. The days of people helping other people seem to be over. And so you are left with your bad choice, with somebody who is either addicted to drugs and is hitting you because you won't give them money, or they have some other addiction, or they're narcissistic, or they're just plain violent. They're insecure. They resent you. They resent something that's happened to them. People get violent for different reasons. And so therefore, you can only protect yourself. How do you do that? Okay, you hear about domestic abuse line. You look up the website. All you do is see, the definition of domestic abuse and what you can do and get in a group. So that's not going to help you when you want action now. So I wrote some little notes, which is what I normally do. A lot of agencies for domestic abuse, but how practical are they? And can they really intervene when needed? Supposing the spouse is drunk, that's a lot of time when abuse happens. Middle of the night, comes home middle of the night, pushes open the door, smelling, falling all over the place. You tell them to keep quiet, and that's enough for them to kick off. You don't even have to do anything major when someone is drunk. He loses his job, feels insecure, doesn't have any money. He wants you to give him money. You know what your money is for, but he's demanding it. You say no, get a thump in the face or whatever they do. Takes drugs or alcohol, like I said, you have to cough up. so they can feed their habit. Unstable past. They're not right in the head. They have mental issues. Ex-criminal. Insecurities about that. But sometimes domestic abuse is a mental issue because it's about someone not feeling that they can interact or communicate with somebody without being violent. That's what that is about. And seeing that person as lording it over them, even though they're not, because they're so insecure. That's how violence happens in relationships. So agencies, police can only intervene when the damage has been done. Neighbours call the police, hospital visits, many questions, incriminating evidence, investigations. You feel alone, unsupported and embarrassed. Who wants to tell their friends and their family members that they're getting beaten up every night? Or most nights. Or they're afraid of their spouse. Sometimes when you're beaten up and you have these marks, you stay in the house. You tell your workplace you're not feeling well. Nobody knows. So what are the options from a government perspective? You can go to a refuge. They have this thing whereby if you're a victim of abuse, you can go to a refuge, but these refuges are not very nice. There's a lot of restrictions. I understand. I don't know. And people just don't feel comfortable in there. I don't know why. I mean, if you are protected in a refuge, I would have thought that it's better than being beaten up at home. But I've never been to one, so I can't say. I don't know if any of you have stayed in a refuge, please let me know what it is about refuges. Why women don't like them or men don't like them. Don't like to stay in them. I'd like to know. Running away, where can you run to? I have a song. Who you gonna run to? Where you gonna hide? And everybody has the same. Well, not everybody. So many people are walking your walk. So many people are experiencing what you're experiencing. You're not alone in this. And then, you've also got the situation of you running away. What happens if he finds me? It's even worse than staying there. Sometimes you're living in fear. Sometimes you have to leave the country. You don't know where to go, who to stay with. You haven't got anyone. You haven't got any money. What do you do? So I'm not dismissing agencies and policies. That say, do you believe that every woman and child deserves a life free from domestic violence? Of course they do. Everybody deserves to be free of violence. Everybody, male or female, and not just violence in the home, violence in the street. A victim of domestic abuse doesn't want a 12-week course. If they're in a domestic abuse situation, their partner probably isn't even going to allow them out of the house. So how are they going to attend a 12-week course to justify or to prove that they are actually a victim of domestic abuse and they want to change their situation? How are they going to do that? For charities and other domestic abuse agencies, they need to have some kind of programming to justify funding. But some of these programs are not practical. They're not really helping the domestic abuse victim. It's helping them after they've gone into a refuge and they've got time and they're trying to settle it down and they're trying to adjust. But those people who are actually in it, in this minute, in this moment, they can't help them. So it's an emotional time. They want a place where they can go there and then. I know if I was in a situation where my partner was beating me, I'd want to be able to run out of that door and know I could go somewhere, no questions asked. It's enough that I've got a cut on my face or a cut on my arm. That should be enough. I shouldn't have to be filling up all this data and going and making sure I report it, go to the hospital and have it evidenced. Have I reported it to the police in order to justify the fact that I've been beaten up? I mean, it's ridiculous that you have to do all of these things in order to get seen, in order to be looked after. So, police are only interested in whether they're going to press charges. And like I said, sometimes they do press charges and the culprit is released. The perpetrator is released. A couple of days later, he's banging on the woman's door. Yes, he gets a restraining order, but look how many of these men violate restraining orders. Look how many women who've had restraining orders end up dead or maimed or something. Is that really protecting them? If these men are violent enough to batter a vulnerable woman, what makes the police or anybody else think that a little piece of paper saying you can't go to that address is going to stop them, especially if they've invested in that address, especially if they half own that address? They're going to be like, what? Are you telling me I can't visit my yard? I saw you tell me? You can't tell me that. That would be the attitude. So, a lot of people don't want to report the perpetrator or go on a course. And if that is the case, they're deemed as not really wanting help. But sometimes it's not that easy. Going to a website seeking help tells what domestic abuse is. You know, you're sitting there with a busted lip and a broken arm. You don't need to be told what domestic abuse is. Advice given is not practical. British culture is evidence, evidence, evidence. No evidence, it didn't happen. Therefore, you need to be brutalised before action is taken, because unless you've got evidence to say you've been beaten up, and maybe beaten up more than once, that's the only time action is taken. Or even if you have one little scratch or something, it's not big enough to constitute domestic abuse in certain cases. And I guess depending on who you are, which town you live in, which part of the world, it makes a difference. So, like I said, you can get a court order, but perpetrators defy them. So what is in place for after the first slog or swipe? What's in place for that person who's now on the floor, whose lip is bleeding, who is about to be struck again? What is in place? What can that person do? So, you realise when it's too late, your partner is violent. He wasn't violent before. He was as nice as pie. All of a sudden you said something and he kicks off, which means he probably had a violent past. And he might be on the Clare's Law list, but he may well not if he wasn't reported. But if you are in a violent situation, no one is going to help you but yourself. And you have to plan and you have to be strategic. I don't know how many of you saw Sleeping with the Enemy. See what her strategy was. Slow but shrewd. She just slowly did what she needed to do to get away. And you have to have it be within you. You can't go through all of this and have this massive strategy. And then if you bump into your ex or he calls you and he says, look, baby, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'll never hurt you again. And you, oh, all right then. And you go back because it'll be doubly worse. So it's something that you really have to mean to do. And so you start, whatever you do, try to save as much money as you can. You take spare clothes, emergency hold all or something. Leave it with a friend or a relative. All your important documents, your passport, your driving license, whatever it is. You keep them in a bag outside the house. somewhere outside the house with somebody you trust. Sometimes there is no one you can trust, because if your partner knows all your friends, he can always bamboozle them and intimidate them into them telling him where you are. So you have to really know who you're going to trust. And it has to be preferably someone your partner doesn't know, and who you can leave these vital things with. So when you're ready to chip, you don't have anything stopping you. You don't have to stop. Oh, I've got to get my passport. Oh, I've got to get my driving license. Oh, I need to get some money. It's all out of the house. So, in the meantime, you don't provoke your partner. You're compliant. Don't rise to his agitation or his desire to agitate you. You just keep calm. And unfortunately, most women in violent relationships wait until there is a severely abusive incident before finally leaving. You don't want to wait until then. You take steps now to give yourself the option to escape. If you don't already have one, open up a savings account in your own name. Gather relevant documents, keys, bank account numbers, birth certificates, Social Security number, your NHS number, whatever. Make sure you have them all. Your most treasured personal items, photo albums, special pictures, etc. Money and a change of clothes, and leave it with, like I said, someone you can trust. Somebody who your partner doesn't know. And don't take anything that's likely to be noticed or missed. And keep the number of the local domestic violence shelter with you all the time. Sorry, things tickling me. Ending a violent relationship is not the same as ending a healthy relationship. You cannot be friends with a violent partner. You cannot trust him or her. You cannot consider his feelings when you tell him it's over. So if you like, you have to break. If you feel like you have to break up in person, do so in a public space. Bring a cell phone and ask a friend to wait for you nearby. Even better, do it via email or telephone to give yourself some distance for safety. Also, give your family and friends a heads up in case he tries to contact you through them. Me personally, I ain't going nowhere near them to go and have no discussion. Not recommended at all. Because when somebody who's violent feels as though they're going to lose you, they change. They'll be the nicest person on earth. They'll do everything to win you over. So you've got to be careful. Once you leave, refuse any contact. Think of no contact as cold turkey. Do not respond to texts or phone calls. Do not meet with him to discuss the reasons for the breakup, or just to say goodbye, or because he needs closure. He knows the reason you broke up. Any attempt to get together, or talk about it is just a manipulative ploy to rope you in. Plus, it's dangerous. Develop a safety plan that includes the worst case scenarios. Never assume you're safe just because you've left. Work with a professional to talk through and plan for all the potential dangers that might arise. Create a list of safe places and safe people. Avoid any habits or routines where you have to be or go somewhere alone, and switch your social networking sites to private. Ask your friends to do the same. Educate yourself about restraining orders. Save any threatening emails, texts, or letters. Instead of changing your phone number, get an alternative number that you give out to friends and let your old one be answered by a messaging service, by voicemail. Not only does this automatically save the messages, it gives the abuser the illusion that this is still your correct phone number. Violence can intensify when a partner tries to leave a relationship, so it's imperative your escape is carefully planned. However, just as some women get trapped into an abusive relationship every day, this very minute a courageous woman is leaving one. Long-term domestic violence is like being kidnapped and tortured for ransom, but you will never have enough to pay off the kidnapper. You decide which is worse. I forget who said that. So we have the National Domestic Violence Helpline, which is 0808 2000 247. That's 0808 2000 247. Available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm not quite sure what it says. I'd like to think there's a person on the other end, but I doubt it. Keep yourself and your children safe. Emergency court orders, the Rights of Women website. Call their helplines. So if you want to keep yourself and your children safe, they have Rights of Women website. Like I said, I don't know how helpful it is. I don't know if there's a human on the other side. Yeah. And then they have something called the Survivor's Handbook, produced by Women's Aid. It's a practical guide to help with recovering from domestic abuse and getting support. So if you put Women's Aid Survival Handbook in the search engine, you should be able to get one of those, and I believe it's free of charge. So in planning your escape route, like I said, don't be provocative, don't be argumentative. This isn't a time for battling with your ego. It's a time for choosing your battles. Don't be obviously aloof or cold or distant because you don't want him to pick up what's happening. So you detach. Detach doesn't mean being aloof. It's like having an invisible protective force shield. Instead of reacting, you detach. And so you do not react to what someone else decides to throw at you just because they're uncomfortable in their own skin. You begin to realize that although their words may hurt, they're not true. So it's just like, regardless, you'll find some people try to attack you and agitate you and try to wind you up. It's about emotionally detaching yourself so they can say all those things and it doesn't affect you at all. Genuinely doesn't affect you. When your partner says something to you and it doesn't impact you, you know you've detached, and that's where you need to be. You need to meet your needs. You learn how to honor what you need, feel, and want. You meet those needs from people who are safe and supportive. This will grow your self-esteem. You will no longer think like a victim, and you will become empowered. Become more assertive. And like I said, assertiveness and aggressiveness, very, very thin line. So you've got to be careful that your assertiveness doesn't come over as aggressiveness. As your self-worth grows, you can learn to be assertive. Your boundaries improve and you ask for what you want and set limits on what you don't. This isn't easy, but your courage grows in recovery. You might get strong enough to leave or insist that your partner get treatment. So this is when, this is during the period where you are building up the courage to take the step to move on. I think I have completed this video, and I do hope you found it useful. Like I said, don't do anything you don't want to do. Always try to seek support and advice from a professional. What I say is just information. It's not medical advice. It's not, shouldn't be taken as as gospel is the only thing I can think of. And when you're making a decision, you have to do what's safe for you. Don't do anything where you feel unsafe or that feels unsafe. Okay? And I think that all, whatever decision you make, just think about yourself, your safety, and the safety of your children if you have any. Bye-bye.